Remember the wild rock anthems and razor-sharp comedy inside the chaotic radio station of WKRP in Cincinnati? From 1978 to 1982, the show delivered more than just laughs. It gave us characters that felt like family. Whether it was the rebellious charm of Johnny Fever or the magnetic presence of Jennifer Marlowe, WKRP became a beloved staple of American television. But behind the scenes, life wasn't always as upbeat as the playlists. Hidden behind the jokes and neon lights were stories of pain, illness, and loss, the kind that never made it into the scripts. In this video, we open the curtain on the cast members who are no longer with us to honor their talent, remember their struggles, and preserve the legacy they left behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe because some shows never truly go off the air. Frank Bonner as Herb Tarlick. Frank Bonner, born Frank Woodrow Bowes Jr. on February 28, 1942, was an American actor and director best known for playing Herb Tarl, the flashy, awkward, and perpetually out-of-style salesman on WKRP in Cincinnati. At the ages of 36, Bonner turned Herb into a sitcom legend, both hilarious and tragically endearing. But Bonner's real life was far from the comedic relief he brought to the screen. Frank Bonner embodied the tragedy behind the laughter. Married 4 times, he endured 2 bitter divorces filled with tension and pain. The deepest wound in his life was the death of his youngest son, Matthew, in a car accident. That pain ripped through his soul like a knife, plunging him into depression and forcing him to retreat from the spotlight for a long time. In his home in Laguna Niguel, he lived quietly among his collection of WKRP memorabilia, as if clinging to the last flickers of his glory days. Although he directed many TV episodes and reprised his role as Herb in the sequel, The New WKRP, he could never escape the shadow of the man in the white belt, a character that seemed to become his artistic destiny. He yearned to be recognized for more serious roles. But the success of Herb Tarl became the very thing that blocked him. In his later years, fate dealt him a cruel curse: Lewy body dementia, a brutal disease that not only withered his body but also slowly erased his memories, his roles, his pride, as if destiny itself wanted him to forget the brilliant years that once defined him. Frank Bonner died on June 16, 2021, at his home in Laguna Niguel, California, at the age of 79. The cause was complications from Lewy body dementia, the illness that took his soul long before it took his body. His final legacy was about $1 million, including his home and his WKRP memorabilia. A quiet testament to a performer who once made America laugh, only to depart in painful obscurity. Carol Bruce as Lillian Carlson. Carol Bruce, born Shirley Levy on November 15, 1919 in Manhattan, New York, appeared on WKRP in Cincinnati at the ages of 59, portraying Lillian Carlson, a powerful, sharp-tongued station owner who embodied a steely woman in the chaotic world of radio. But behind the icy gaze and deep voice on screen was a life filled with quiet loneliness and melancholic notes of regret. Born into a Jewish family, Carol began her singing career in the late 1930s and quickly rose to stardom on Broadway, despite having no formal vocal training. She was the first to succeed Helen Morgan in the legendary role of Julie in Showboat, discovered by Irving Berlin in a nightclub. Carol was a true star of American theater and radio during the mid-10th century, a voice that touched hearts and a presence that earned reverence. Yet her personal life told a different story after a failed marriage to a music director. She raised her daughter Julie alone. A bitter financial dispute in the 1980s fractured their mother-daughter bond beyond repair. She never remarried and once confided in the press that fame never filled the void in her heart. Despite her memorable return to the screen as Lillian Carlson, Hollywood typecast her into cold, stern mother roles, an image that eventually exhausted her passion for acting. She lived in seclusion in her Woodland Hills, California home filled with antique jewelry, vintage posters, and handwritten sheet music from her Broadway heyday. But that home brought little peace. She silently battled chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. COPD declined all interviews and retreated from the public eye. In her final years, she lived as a shadow trapped between radiant memories and prolonged solitude. She once described that feeling as the lingering echo of a song with no ending. Carol Bruce passed away on October 9, 2007, at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills at the age of 87. She was cremated and her ashes were given to a cousin. At the time of her passing, her net worth was about $800,000, mostly from her home and Broadway memorabilia. Her final legacy as a once dazzling star who faded quietly into the unfinished melody of her own life. Gordon Jump as Arthur Carlson. Alexander Gordon Jump, born April 1, 1932, was an American actor best known for his role as Arthur Big Guy Carlson, the bumbling yet sincere radio station boss in the hit sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati, 1978 to 1982. At the time, he was 46 years old, bringing to life a TV icon beloved by millions. But behind the curtain of fame lay a life of heartbreak wounds and a lonely ending. Gordon was a multi-asceted talent. From a local TV comedian to the lovable, clueless dad in sitcoms, from the face of Maytag repairman commercials to a deeply controversial role on Different Strokes, where he played a child molester, a career risk he took believing it was necessary to awaken public awareness. Yet it was the role of Carlson that became a gilded cage, locking him into the image of a kind but helpless father, which led to him being rejected for other roles, and his career spiraled downward after WRP. His personal life was equally chaotic. 2 failed marriages left him with 3 children he never truly connected with, as he always prioritized the set over his family. In his final years, he suffered from pulmonary fibrosis, a disease that slowly suffocated him as if fate itself were tightening its grip in lonely, breathless silence. Gordon Jump died on September 22, 2003, at the age of 71. He passed away at his home near Los Angeles and was buried at El Toro Memorial Park in Lake Forest, California. His net worth at the time was estimated at around $1.5 million, mostly from his Los Angeles home and a collection of vintage radios. Howard Hessman as Dr. Johnny Fever. Howard Hessman, born February 27, 1940 in Lebanon, Oregon, was an American actor best known for his role as Dr. Johnny Fever, a quirky, rebellious, and magnetic DJ in the hit sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati, 1978 to 1982. At the ages of 38, Hessman didn't just play the role, he lived it. He had been a real-life DJ under the name Don Sturdy at KMPX-FM in San Francisco, breathing authentic energy into the character that catapulted him to fame. But that rebellious spirit would also become a trap imprisoning both his career and inner life. After WKRP's roaring success, Hessman tried to shake off the weird DJ image in search of more serious roles. He made a mark in Head of the Class as history teacher Charlie Moore, a character vastly different, intellectual, and emotionally grounded. But the past lingered. He never escaped the shadow of Johnny Fever. Major opportunities gradually faded, leaving him with recurring guest roles and supporting parts. In real life, his 33-year marriage to actress Caroline Drock endured many storms. They separated quietly and later reconciled, had no children, and often navigated a relationship filled with arguments and emotional friction. One major blow to his spirit was the sudden death of a close friend, a former music colleague, which sent him into a deep depression. During his peak years, he had abused substances, and in later years he withdrew from public life for long periods. Hessman sought peace through painting, writing, and restoring classic cars. His prized car collection in his Los Angeles home became his personal sanctuary after a creative journey filled with fractures. But that house became more of a museum to the past, a quiet shelter for unfulfilled artistic dreams, and a faded spotlight. On January 29, 2022, Howard Hessman died in Los Angeles at the age of 81 due to complications from colon surgery. His death was quiet, a somber full stop to the life of a gifted artist, forever tied to the image of the crazy DJ who once rocked American television only to fade into the shadows of his own fame. He left behind a net worth of about $2 million, including his Los Angeles home, and classic car collections silent witnesses to the soul of an artist who never truly found peace. Hamilton Camp as Buddy Gravers. Hamilton Camp, born Robin S. Camp on October 30, 1934 in London, was evacuated to the United States during World War II with his mother and sister when he was just a boy. At age 44, he appeared in a 1978 episode of WKRP in Cincinnati as Buddy Gravers, a quirky, eccentric character with a rich inner life mirroring the fractured soul of the artist himself. Camp was a multi-talented performer, a folk singer, stage actor, TV actor, and voice actor. He had his moment in the Broadway spotlight, shared stages with Janis Joplin, wrote the iconic song Pride of Man, and voiced the legendary Gizmo Duck in DuckTales. But his real life was a discordant symphony of setbacks and heartbreak. His first marriage to artist Karen Kelly ended in financial crisis and a bitter custody battle over their children Nathan and Rachel. Courtroom struggles soaked in tears. His second marriage also ended quietly. He never completed the divorce process and lived alone in a house in Los Angeles filled with guitars, mandolins, and untouched memories. After his second wife passed away in 2002, he spiraled into deeper depression, surviving off modest royalties from voiceover work and minor acting gigs. Hollywood once embraced him, then cast him aside. Despite roles in major series like MASH, Cheers, Three's Company, and Star Trek, Camp never received the recognition he truly deserved. His brief appearance as Buddy Gravers in WKRP was just a flash, a reminder of how easily he was forgotten. Even the cartoon characters he voiced, from Merlin to Harmony Smurf, seemed to speak for a soul that only truly existed through its voice. Hamilton Camp died of a heart attack on October 2, 2005, at the age of 70. As if his weary heart finally gave out under the weight of sadness, he left behind 6 children, 13 grandchildren, and a net worth of approximately $500,000, including his quiet Los Angeles home and a collection of vintage instruments. The last echoes of an artist forever searching for the spotlight but lost in his own darkness. Ian Wolfe as Hirsch. Ian Marcus Wolfe, born November 4, 1896 in Canton, Illinois, was one of the most enduring character actors in Hollywood history, with over 400 film and television roles across 7 decades. At age 85, he portrayed Hirsch, the sarcastic yet loyal old butler, in a 1981 episode of WKRP in Cincinnati. Though brief, the role encapsulated the essence of a man who lived his entire life in the shadows of wisdom, restraint, and quiet dignity. Wolfe began his career on the Broadway stage in 1919 and transitioned to film in 1934. From there, he became a constant presence in classic films. Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935, Saboteur, 1942. Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. THX-1, 138, 1971, and Dick Tracy, 1990. Audiences recognized his face as that of a father, doctor, butler, or wise elder even when he was only in his 30s. He was Hollywood's eternal old man. Yet he never landed a leading role or held an Oscar in his hand. Off-screen, his life was even more solitary. Married to Elizabeth Schroeder since 1924, with whom he had 2 daughters, Wolfe spent his later years isolated in a 2-story home in Los Angeles. Filled with rare books and antique furniture, it became a quiet fortress where he wrote poetry, read old scripts, and waited for time to pass. Family relationships fractured over inheritance disputes, and he died without reconciliation in complete solitude. Though respected in theater circles and a World War I medical specialist, Ian Wolfe felt perpetually overlooked by Hollywood. His role as Hirsch in WKRP was one final bright moment. Witty, sharp, yet profoundly humane, just like the man himself, Ian Wolfe passed away on January 23, 1992, at age 95 of natural causes. No grand funeral, no farewell lights. He left the world as he lived in it, quietly, steadfastly, and anonymously, with a net worth of about $600,000 bequeathed to an arts preservation society. a lifelong actor who never stopped performing, yet never received a leading role, not even in his own life story. Alan Ann McClain as Carmen Carlson. Alan Ann McClain, born December 1, 1926, in Grand Maillara, Quebec, Canada, was a multi-talented artist and accomplished actress, singer, and dancer who worked with legends like Balanchine Jerome Robbins and Agnes Dial. At the ages of 52, she played Carmen Carlson, the calm, thoughtful wife of Arthur Carlson on WKRP in Cincinnati, 1979 to 1982, appearing in around 15 episodes. On screen, Carmen was a source of peace for Big Guy. But McLaren's real life was a sorrowful, silent symphony. An only child, McClain lost her father just 4 months before she was born. She was raised in Brooklyn by her widowed mother, began dance training at a young age, and stepped onto Broadway before turning 20. Her career flourished with standout roles in Calamity Jane, They Shoot Horses, Jeremiah Johnson, and numerous celebrated musicals, but stage lights couldn't soothe her deepest pain, the death of her only son, Matthew, from AIDS-related complications. That shock led her to virtually withdraw from acting, retreating into her home in North Bend, Washington. McClain's health steadily declined over the years. Alzheimer's disease slowly erased her memories. She disappeared from public view, living quietly with the grief of losing her son and mourning her husband, actor George Gaines, who died 2 years before her. Alan Ann McClain passed away on May 21, 2018, at her home in North Bend, Washington, at the age of 91. The cause was complications from Alzheimer's disease. Her estimated net worth was about $700,000, mostly from her home, and a collection of stage memorabilia, the final remnants of a golden era, when she captivated Broadway and beyond. Max Wright as Frank Bartman. George Edward. Max Wright, born August 2, 1943 in Detroit, Michigan, was an American actor who played Frank Bartman in a 1982 episode of WKRP in Cincinnati at age 39. Though just a fleeting guest role, it was a small step toward the defining part of his career. Willie Tanner, the kind-hearted suburban dad in the sitcom Alf, 1986 to 1990. But when the stage lights dimmed, Max Wright's life unfolded into a long, heartbreaking tragedy. Max embodied the gap between public image and private reality. On ALF, he was a patient father to a chaotic alien. In real life, he was a devoted husband to Linda Ibarrondo, his partner from 1965 until her death from breast cancer in 2017. Yet after Alf's fame faded, his world unraveled. In the 2000s, Wright was arrested multiple times for drug use, shattering the wholesome image of America's TV dad. He became estranged from his 2 children, Ben and Daisy, and retreated into isolation in his Hermosa Beach home, cluttered with broken-down vintage cars echoing the disorder of his own life. Though he once graced Broadway and earned a Tony nomination, Wright carried deep bitterness. He openly despised his time on ALF, calling it grim work, and walked off the set on the final day without saying goodbye. But in later years, worn down by illness and fatigue, he looked back with a touch less anger, conceding that ALF brought a lot of joy to people, a rare moment of peace in a life filled with conflict. Max Wright passed away on June 26, 2019, at the age of 75 from lymphoma, a cancer that had returned after years of remission. He died at the Lillian Booth Actors Home in New Jersey, a refuge for performers in their final chapter. Those who once made audiences laugh but ended their own stories in silence. His net worth was around $1 million, including his home, and a collection of old cars, fragments of nostalgia from a life that never truly found the starring role it deserved. Ned Wertheimer as Steve Peavey. Ned Wertheimer, born on October 27, 1923 in Buffalo, New York, was an American actor best known to television audiences for his role as Ralph the Polite Doorman in the sitcom The Jeffersons. But before rising to fame with that role, he made a brief appearance at age 54 in an episode of WKRP in Cincinnati 1978, playing Steve Peavey, a small role that still showcased his signature charm and composed comedic presence. Though he had a career that spanned decades, Ned Werrimer's life was a solitary journey. Losing his younger brother at a young age led him to withdraw from social connections. Despite his fame, he never married and lived alone in a Los Angeles home filled with vintage radios and classic literature, a private world few ever entered. Quietly, he donated to children's charities, perhaps as a way to heal the emotional wounds of his childhood. Yet even those acts of kindness couldn't fill the persistent emptiness in his soul. Despite achieving fame through the Jeffersons, Werrimer gradually faded from Hollywood's spotlight in his final years. He felt disheartened by no longer being offered substantial roles. Ironically, WKRP, a minor footnote in his vast career, became one of the rare moments where he felt truly seen, however fleeting. In November 2012, he fell in his kitchen at his Burbank home. The severe injury led to a long hospital stay, plunging him deeper into a sense of inescapable loneliness. On January 2, 2013, Ned Werrimer passed away in a Los Angeles hospital at the age of 89. The cause of death was complications from the fall, a quiet, gentle ending that mirrored the way he had lived his entire life. Nicholas Worth as Major Edmund Hunter. Nicholas Worth, born on September 4, 1937, in St. Louis, Missouri, served 3 years in the U.S. Army as a paratrooper, an experience that left a profound mark on both his life and his acting career. At age 41, he appeared in a 1979 episode of WKRP in Cincinnati as Major Edmund Hunter, a strict officer with a firm and commanding presence perfectly embodying the military traits etched into his own character by real-life service. On screen, Nicholas Worth was frequently cast as terrifying villains, from an acrylic killer in Don't Answer the Phone to a cold-hearted rapist in The Rape of Richard Beck. But behind the menacing exterior was a deeply private man with a love for psychology and classical literature. He lived alone in a small house in Los Angeles, surrounded by military memorabilia and personal journals. He never married and once shared that a childhood filled with physical abuse and emotional neglect made it impossible for him to open up to love. On May 7, 2007, Nicholas Worth died of heart failure at Valley Presbyterian Hospital in Van Nuys at the age of 69. His net estate was worth approximately $500,000, including his home and a collection of military artifacts, fragments of a past he never truly escaped. George Gaines as Henri. George Gaines, born Georges on May 16, 1917 in Helsinki, appeared at age 62 in a 1979 episode of WKRP in Cincinnati as Henri, a supporting character who brought gentle humor to the screen. It was a small moment in the grand and complex canvas of his life, that of a seasoned artist, a soldier who fought in a world war, and a father carrying a heart shattered by loss. His film career was marked by roles such as Commandant Lassard in the Police Academy series and the stern yet kind adoptive father in Punky Brewster. However, for Gaines, these became roles he couldn't break away from. Despite his ability to convey depth and tragedy, he was often typecast in comedic or secondary parts. The role of Henri in WKRP was a fun diversion, but Gaines himself almost never mentioned it. Perhaps because it reminded him of a career he felt was constrained. The greatest sorrow of his life didn't come from his profession, but from the death of his son Matthew, a talented kayaker who died in an accident in India in 1989 while filming for ESPN. The tragedy plunged Gaines and his wife, actress Alan Ann McClary, into deep silence. They lived quietly in North Bend, Washington, where Gaines spent his remaining years collecting rare instruments and composing music, a way to stay connected to an artistic past that had slowly slipped away. George Gaines passed away on February 15, 2016, at the home of his daughter at the age of 98. His estimated net worth was around $1 million, including his home and his instrument collection. Nobleingham as Smileene Carpenter. Noble Henri Willingham Jr. was born on August 31, 1931 in the small town of Minola, Texas. With his thick Southern accent and rugged appearance, he easily embodied characters with cowboy swagger, military grit, or stern authority. In 1980, at the age of 49, he appeared in WKRP in Cincinnati as Smileene Al Carpenter. A minor role, but one that still carried his unmistakable Texas charm. Willingham wasn't a wide-eyed dreamer rushing into Hollywood. Before entering the film industry, he was a government and economics teacher at Sam Houston High School in Houston, having earned a master's degree in educational psychology from Baylor University. He also served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, an experience that later infused his portrayals of soldiers and stoic fathers with authenticity. His turning point came when he auditioned for The Last Picture Show 1971. From there, his film career spanned more than 30 movies. Greased Lightning, Good Morning Vietnam Lab, Bomba City Slickers, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and included guest roles on Star Trek The Next Generation and Quantum Leap. But his most memorable performance was as C.D. Parker, the loyal friend of Chuck Norris in Walker, Texas Ranger. That role reflected who he truly was. Strong, quiet, and deeply loyal. Yet behind the spotlight, his life was marked by quiet sorrow. The death of his wife from ovarian cancer left a void that nothing could fill. From then on, he lived alone in his Palm Springs home, surrounded by Western memorabilia like old saddles and antique guns. He once boldly left Walker, Texas Ranger to run for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, but the effort was unsuccessful. He passed away on January 17, 2004 from heart failure at the age of 72. Though his estimated net worth was around $800,000, including his home and collection of Western artifacts, he left behind far more. The image of a down-to-earth man who lived true to the Southern spirit. WKRP in Cincinnati wasn't just a sitcom. It was an emotional journey where talented stars left an indelible mark on fans' hearts. Though many of them have passed on their laughter and legacy live on through every episode. Which character from WKRP in Cincinnati was your favorite? Share your memories and help us honor them by leaving a comment today.